All trustees are present. So we'll start the meeting. I'll call the Monday, November 15th, 2021 regular Board of Trustees meeting to order. Could we please have the roll call, Madam Clerk?
Mayor Angelo,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning,
Present.
Trustee Lowell,
Present.
Trustee Miller,
Present.
Trustee Rogan,
Present.
Trustee Waugh,
Present.
and Trustee Carabas.
Please all rise and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the
and to the
republic for
republic
which
for
it
which it
stands,
stands,
one
one
nation, under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with liberty and justice
for
for
all.
all.
On Lions, we take time to participate in a reflective moment of silence. We're having a resurgence of COVID cases, and let's just keep in mind the families of the victims of COVID. Thank you. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Are there any items on the agenda that any trustees wish to amend? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Madam Clerk?
Mayor Angelo,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning,
Aye.
Trustee Waugh,
Aye.
Trustee Rogan,
Aye.
Trustee Miller,
Aye.
Trustee Lowell,
Aye.
The agenda is approved unanimously by the trustees present. Next is audience business. This is an opportunity for anybody in the audience to address the Board of Trustees on any subject they wish to discuss this evening. We have no second readings, so anybody can speak about and address the Board of Trustees on any subject they would like. Please state your name and address for the record. Is there anyone? Always help me, Madam Clerk. So is there anybody that wishes to address the Board of Trustees at this time?
I
Nobody?
don't see anyone with their hand raised, sir.
All right. Sergeant Christ, Boulder County Sheriff's Office report, sir. Sergeant Christ?
He said he was going to be here.
I think he's
Dolores,
on.
he had asked for a link.
Yep, I sent it to him, so he may be just getting on now.
Oh, there he is.
There he is.
There he is.
Okay. Sergeant Christ, you have the floor, sir.
All right. Sorry about that. I was waiting for the link. So I have just a few things to talk about. Sorry I wasn't at the last meeting. I was heavily immersed in a public safety leadership development course out of town, which is still continuing on. It's a week-long course. It's done really well for us. Me and a group of other sergeants have gone down there. Let's see here. I'm going to do a couple of public service announcements, I think, with my report tonight, since a couple of them directly pertain to the town. We took an auto theft report today, and as kind of 'tis the season, I want to make sure that everyone is aware that mostly crime is a crime of opportunity. Vehicles are left unlocked, vehicles are left with keys in it, doors of houses are unlocked. I know I sound like a broken record when I say this, but Lyons is a great town, and but crime is out there. And appreciate the fact that, you know, we live in a great town that a lot of people feel very safe, which they should. However, criminals are out there. So please, please, please lock your stuff up and close your garage doors and all that good stuff. The second public service announcement I'd like to talk about a little bit is the ongoing graffiti issue and criminal mischief problems that we have in town. Once again, we live in a beautiful town. The flood recovery and all the efforts to build beautiful parks and awesome landscapes and structures and things like that. We're really blessed to live in a nice town, and it really disappoints me heavily when I have to take report after report of spray painting, vulgar things and racist things and just all of that stuff over our beautiful parks and landscape. So, you know, the sheriff's office, we're thin. We can only be so many places at one time. We do a lot of patrols in the parks. I was out there myself today, walking Bone Park. That's where we got hit lately with a lot of stuff. You know, this is just costing the town, the taxpayers, a lot of money. We're going to start breaching the thousands of dollars for cleanup costs every time this happens. I have some significant plans in place. Our investigations are ongoing, so I won't comment too much about that. However, what I'd like to just kind of get out there is, you know, we need the help from the public, the folks that are out walking their dogs, the folks that are going in and out of the parks. If you see something, say something, please. If something looks goofy, somebody looks out of place, somebody's, you know, sleeking around the trees or trying to be evasive, I don't know, say something, call somebody so that we can get out there and try to get these folks that are causing these problems. It is just really becoming a huge nuisance, and it's just a shame, and it's heartbreaking to see this kind of stuff go on in town. So I just want to throw those two things out. The next thing I want to talk about real quick is I believe that the town has applied for a grant on some monies to come in based on an opioid crisis and things like that. And I think that some of that money was hopefully allocated for a proposal that I had sat down with Victoria or Town Administrator Simonson and some members from the Sheriff's Office that are involved in our co-responders program. This is just a completely awesome program that helps mental illness, and mental illness is such a huge part of our community and just our society in general. 21 years ago, when I got into this business, I dealt with 90% criminals and 10% mental health. And it was very rare that we had to go on mental health type calls. I would probably say today that those numbers could easily be reversed, that most of the calls we deal with have a mental health illness attached to it, which is really too bad. I just want to put a plug in for the co-responders and for this budget money, because in and around the town of Lyons, we have had the opportunity, and I can name 4 people off the top of my head right now that the co-responders have come up and helped us with. They work hand in hand too with our LEAF program and some of the organizers and things that we already have here in town, which is a great resource. The benefit that we have with some of the co-responders are there are folks that are clinicians that can come out on calls with us, and they also carry forward after law enforcement gets involved and the mental health crisis is averted or things like that. Our co-responders continue on with these folks. They help them through daily life. They help them with resources that are just not available right here in town. And it's a countywide, it's a countywide movement that's been going on. And in 21 years of doing this job, it is the absolute best and finest mental health intervention team that I have yet to be seen. They're just incredible. So I just want to make sure that if anybody has any questions, feel free to call or knock on my door, and I'll bring one of the co-responder clinicians up and we can sit down and talk. It's just a great program, and there'll be more to come for that. We get the services regardless right now, but we're kind of aiming to get a permanent clinician up in the Lyons area to be specific for our community, which I think would really be a benefit. So I just wanted to throw that out there tonight. And let's see. Other than that, everything's going good in town. School's back in session, obviously. Everything's going good in and around the schools. I do want to share too, going back to the co-responders real quick. I want to share some good news. So our SRO, Deputy Mitch Roseborough, was put in for a nomination of Employee of the Month last month for some work that he did. And I just want to summarize a little bit of the nomination because it really shows what I just kind of summarized with the co-responders. But give me just a couple minutes here. And so Mitch responded to what we call a red report, which is a person that called in because they felt that somebody was a DUI. It's called report every drunk driver immediately. So Mitch was heading into school and patrolling right around the school areas, and he heard the call. He intercepted this car, contacted a woman that was driving the car, and this woman was obviously in crisis. She was sobbing. She was hysterical. Mitch spent about 45 minutes on this traffic stop trying to understand what was going wrong in her life. She wasn't drunk. She wasn't on drugs. She basically conveyed to Mitch that she was having one of the worst days of her life. And it was a problem. She had moved up from out of state and from a bad relationship and was unemployed, and things were crashing down. So she was definitely in crisis. And this is where co-responders really helped out. Mitch was in contact with them. Mitch, along with co-responders, were able to hook her up with a pastor over at LifeBridge Church. They scheduled an appointment that day, like around 4 o'clock, for her to come in and meet with the pastor because she really wanted to get back involved with the church. She had some addiction problems that she was battling, but she failed to show up. And Mitch took it upon himself. He went home that night. He was pretty worried about it. He was concerned about this young woman. And the very next morning, got back in touch with her, and she had made the decision that day, instead of going to the meeting at the church, to go home and buy vast amounts of alcohol and drink herself to the point of blacking out, which was part of her addiction. And she regretted that and asked Mitch if there was still the opportunity for her to come over to the church. And Mitch said, absolutely. And so Mitch took time out of his day to get back over to the church and meet up with the pastor and meet up with this young lady. And the co-responders came out and worked with her. And I'm very happy to report that she is on the mend. She is working with the church. She is going back and seeking counseling, and she's sober. And she made a statement to Mitch that this was exactly the person, you are exactly the person and the thing I needed to be in, to have intervened in my life at that time. So I share that because of just the constant negativity that law enforcement gets, the constant negativity and second guessing of the job we do. Mitch, being an extremely humble person and a huge heart, will tell you that he was just doing his job. But it's the compassion in the officers that we have in this town that carry this mission forward. So I wanted to share that publicly because I think that is something that was worth mentioning. Other than that, I don't have anything else for my report tonight. Sorry I was so long-winded, but those are definitely some things I wanted to have on public record. And for anybody that's in earshot of this meeting tonight, I hope you've heard me. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergeant Christ, and thank Mitch. I'll speak on behalf of the Board of Trustees. I'm sure that they'll concur. Not only a huge heart, but a huge man. And also in regard to any monies that the town could realize from the opioid settlement, I think this Board of Trustees has already spoken about the issue of supporting co-responders. So I think that you can count on any monies that we receive in regard to that going towards co-responders. I can't think of a better place, Sergeant Christ.
Great. Thank you so much.
Any other comments for Sergeant Christ? Trustee Miller.
I just have a quick question.
Yes.
Are we still seeing homeless camps around at all down my?
Not too much. Come wintertime, they tend to disperse into the inner city areas, down to the homeless shelter in Boulder and places like that. We haven't had any that I'm aware of at this point.
Okay, thanks. I was just curious.
Yep, you're welcome.
Any further questions for Sergeant Chris? Thank you, sir. Please be safe.
Thank you.
Trustee reports. I'll just go across the screen. Trustee Rogan.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have a ton to report. The HPC did not meet. The EBC is meeting Thursday. And I just want to let everybody know that on Saturday morning, in conjunction with the library, we had a program called Run for Something, which kind of clears up the mystery about how to run for local office and what's that like. We had a great panel of former trustees and former Mayor Van Domelen. And it was recorded, and thanks to Director Mitchell, it's now up on the town YouTube channel. So just want the public to be aware of that and hopefully give it a look. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Rogan. I think that was a great idea, and I apologize about not being there, but I had a basketball game that my grandson was in, and I don't miss those, especially since I'll be out of town for a little while. Mayor Pro Tem Browning.
Yeah, a couple of things to report from the Parks and Recreation Commission. Most importantly, there have been 2 resignations off the commission. Chairman Ian Brighton has stepped down immediately, and Vice Chair Chris Cope is stepping down, I believe, in December. So there are 2 openings on the PRC, and I would encourage people all over town to apply for it, and other trustees to try to. I've already tried to talk some of the younger folks that I know with kids who are active in the parks into considering service there. It's so please be aware that those openings exist, and encourage people to apply. Let's see, the last PRC meeting and also in between meetings, the board may recall that the board passed a resolution requesting Boulder County Parks and Open Space to enter into discussions with the town of Lyons about a Lyons to Hall Ranch connecting trail and off-highway trail. And I guess I've got some good news and some other news about that. The good news is that they have the Boulder County Parks and Open Space staff has advised that they are going to at least review their decision made 15 to 20 years ago to keep most of that space closed and not to do a connecting trail. As a part of the discussion before the board, there was a discussion about having a site visit out on the Hall Ranch portion of it to look at an old ranch road trail that exists there and everything. Boulder County Parks and Open Space has decided that they're going to, I guess, do the preliminary part at least of their review on their own without a site visit, and then they would reconsider doing a site visit when they've done the initial part of their review, which they said not to expect before year end. So perhaps sometime early next year, they will get back with us and we can maybe follow up on the site visit that was discussed at our meeting. So that's my report.
Thank you, sir. Trustee Miller.
Housing and Human Services met last Monday. We discussed, we just started discussing our goals for next year. One of which is getting the Goodwill Fund posted far before we have been in the past. So those funds could be spent prior to mid-year, that people haven't had enough time to spend them as they should. So that's one of the things that we're working on getting done. And we also really want to get some more stuff for the seniors, some more stuff for the seniors on the books. So we're looking into how to do that. And then also getting the information for the 911 sign up out there. And also the Lions Thrive. We discussed that for folks, how to get that information out there, making sure that everybody had done that as well. So that's really all that we had talked about. Goals were the most important thing though. So yeah, that's all I have.
Thank you. Trustee Lowell.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I sent out to all concerned the first tranche of an email about the annual town report. Gave everybody a heads up that they should be expecting more from me. I think this year is going to go a lot easier. Remember, we were making it up out of whole cloth last year, but at least now most of the boards, commissions, departments, et cetera, they've all got their boilerplate in place, and all they need to do is update their what they had planned for the year, and then tell me what the goals are for the following year. I'll do it again. I don't mind doing it. I find it kind of satisfying. The one thing I'm going to need from Administrator Simonson, though, is I'm going to need, God, I can't remember his name, the guy who spoke to us on fire mitigation. First name Roy, lives up on Ewald.
Leggert.
Yeah, if you have his email, can you forward it to me? Because I want to get the fire mitigation report into the annual town report. I think it's very important. So look for more information on that coming up. The CMEX committee meets Wednesday. Just a reminder, that I'm your rep there. So if you've got anything at all that you want to broach to CMEX, questions or suggestions, just send me a quick note and I'll pass it along and see what I can find out. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Trustee Wah.
Hello, thank you, Mayor. Thank you to the board. So I don't have a tremendously long report. I was not able to attend the Planning Commission last week, but with this audience, it was brought up during the workshop, and this audience is significantly larger. We've had great success in participation in the survey, and I encourage all of those on the call tonight to, if you have not already participated, to participate, and to encourage your friends and neighbors to participate in the survey. 392 is a great number. We'd like to get a lot more. We have till November 30th. The survey goes well with Turkey, I understand. So feel free to do that sometime next week. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Wah. I attended the Sustainable Futures Commission meeting. Paul Capps made a presentation about the affordable housing project. He brought up that he is trying to do 2 of the units out of Hempcrete. The SFC requested that to see if he could maybe do those 2 units in all electricity as well. We spoke about a comprehensive electric plan update. I had spoken to UEB Chairman
Jim Kerr.
thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, who I'll be going to Nebraska with tomorrow to the meeting about that. And he said that he would like to review any plans in collaboration with the SFC. And the SFC had no objection to that. Obviously, the utility is under the UEB's jurisdiction, so that made sense. Let's see. That was it for me in regard to boards and commissions. I just feel it's important for me to go to the mean meeting in Nebraska and learn as much as I can in regard to the electric issue and supplying electricity to the town. I'll just state one small fact for the record. A substantial amount of the electricity that we received is generated by hydroelectric. The reservoirs that generate that electricity are at their lowest level since they were constructed. So there is a lot of information that we're going to have to analyze. And so I think it's a really good idea to get people who are at the forefront of this particular issue advising us. So that's one of the reasons I'm going, and I'll be pursuing this based on the overwhelming support of the Solar Garden. Madam Clerk, could you please read the next item into the record?
The next item is presentation of the Lions Arts and Humanities Council Creative District information under boards and commissions.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Farrell, are you going to be making this presentation?
Yes, I'm a part of this, but we
Okay.
also have Lauren Click
Okay, good.
joining us.
Good.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lauren Click. I'm the chair of the Arts and Humanities Commission, and I just want to thank you for considering the $9,000 budget dedication for public art in 2022 and the opportunity to talk with you this evening about creative districting. So Jocelyn, our friend and colleague, is going to talk us through our short presentation on creative district information and hopefully answer a lot of the questions that you've had. As I'm sure you're aware, Jocelyn's been involved with the LAHC since she was a trustee in 2018. And I'm just going to be sharing my screen. So Jocelyn, let me know when you want to go to the next slide. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, everyone, for having us here this evening. I understand that there are a lot of questions about LAHC and the Creative District. Trustee Browning, I know that you have raised some really excellent questions for us about the organizational structure and how various entities will function, reporting accountability for future boards, and processes on how to govern and how the funding will work. I know one question, will we be a 501c3, et cetera? So my plan this evening is to help clarify a few of these things so that you can feel more comfortable about allocating $18,000 for a creative district. I'd like to do a quick overview of what the creative district is in case there are any members that are in the community that are here watching us this evening that might also be interested. I would like to give you a timeline. And then if we have enough time and you're interested, I'd also be happy to outline a little bit about the LAHC's financial structure and then answer any questions that you might have. So why a creative district in Lions? So the creative district will accomplish a major goal of the 2010 comprehensive plan. It supports and expands arts education, community engagement, and quality of life that is so unique to Lions. And I actually do believe that this still applies today. The next slide, please. The Colorado Creative District Program certifies communities that contribute to the state's economy through creativity, culture, and arts. We actually have currently 3 major businesses in town that are expressing some interest in investing into the creative district. And I'd like you to consider some timing, which I really think is ideal for us. We have a new hotel that is planning to open and build within the next year, knock on wood. And this is going to bring for us some new jobs. It'll be an increase in sales taxes as well as lodging taxes. So we really are at a new beginning for Lions. Trustee Browning, you really hit home, I thought, in our discussion during the workshop. Flood recovery is on the end. And here we are now. I feel like it's in a way facing a new era. So we have an opportunity to really invest into the economy, the economics, and the vitality of Lyons downtown and out into the Eastern Corridor. And with the creative district, I think this is going to really contribute to that. So the other element, next page, please. The creative district must. I'm not going to read you this entire list, but I'd also like you to consider a little bit more timing. The comprehensive plan and the Restart Destinations program that is currently taking place right now. While we're doing a lot of researching and planning for a creative district, we also have this golden opportunity to create community and ask for support and input. And where should we concentrate our arts going forward? Perhaps it's the depot. And how could we do that? We really actually could not ask for better timing. I think we have so much momentum right now going forward. And 2022 is seeing these three programs really in conjunction is very exciting for our time. Next slide, please. So the benefits of the creative district, I'm not going to read through this, but this isn't just about Lyons. This is a statewide initiative. And so funding from this, once we are a creative district, we will get $10,000. But this is a statewide Colorado economic initiative. So I think that our being a part of that really sets us apart on the Front Range as an art community. Next slide, please. So sustainable forces of funding. All funds will be transparent with the creative district, with the LAHC to the Board of Trustees. We will work with the town's finance director. We're going to create a process that will help keep the BOT informed on all financial aspects of the creative district, the LAHC, any of the fundraising and other grant income that we should be having that can come in. Next slide. So now some timeline for your consideration. Really, today we are in the infancy stage. So unfortunately, we don't actually have all of the answers to your really good questions, but we need to think about this similar to as we would a parking study, for example, or a traffic impact study. We need to pay a consultant up front to do the research and to create the governing structure, the budget, and the work plan. Similar to hiring an architect to build our house, before the house is drawn up, the architect needs to do the research and find out what it is as a community that we would want to build for our creative district. So your $18,000 gives us the ability to hire the consultant. Her name is Jamie Gaialis. And her job is going to be exactly to answer these questions, to write the best application for certification. This will take time. We anticipate, as you can see from the timeline right here, that between the first quarter of 2021 to the fall of 2022 to the fall, next fall, she will be doing the research and working with us from the LAHC perspective and the Board of Trustees. So we really can prepare a plan, meeting these stages, and submit it for application. And just a side note, Jamie Gaialis is actually the person who wrote the application for the Colorado Creative District. So she's about she's about the most expert person that we can possibly hire for this, and she's very excited. So yes, research is needed. Oversight is needed. We can report to the board in any way that the board would like to establish. All expenditures and invoices will go through the town. So full transparency of costs will be reported and realized. We want the board's involvement. We would like to have a liaison from the Board of Trustees. We're ready to sit down and hash out any of the details to set up and make sure that we have proper communication and a reporting process. We would like to work with the finance director to make sure that in your reportings quarterly or bi-monthly as she does, that you're feeling comfortable as to what's happening on a line item issue, month to month. And so I recommend that we sit down the second week of January and we can start that process immediately. Before I go to the next slide, does anybody have any questions about the Creative District itself?
Are there any questions so far? Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah. Yeah, I want to clarify. I think I know the answer to this because I think it's been brought up before, but this district would not be just for visual arts of painting and sculpture. It would also include things like music, performing arts, drama and films and that type of thing, right? So, because I think when we think of art in Lyons, we've seen all the sculptures around town and we know about the art shows, but I just want to make sure that it was broader than that and that an effort would be made in the organizational process to reach out to for example, the very active music community that we have here. And there are people that have worked on a film festival here in years past. And I just wanted to clarify what the scope would be.
Thank you. And, and in addition to that, education, it would be wonderful if we could start an arts education program for anyone in the community and of all ages.
Are there any other questions at this point? Continue.
Okay, so the last slide, this is a little bit more to the Arts and Humanities Commission. I know some questions came up last week about how we are funding ourselves and then how we organize the various funding sources. And so we put this together to maybe help give you an idea of what we do as a commission. A few years ago, we were directed by the Board of Trustees to make the LAHC have a little bit more skin in the game to help fund projects that cost more than what's given annually by the Board of Trustees. And this really began with the Bell of Renewal sculpture. And the Arts and Humanities has really embraced this directive to be sure that our public art projects are funded, a third from the Board of Trustees, a third from our operating budget, and a third from our grants. So all funding through art shows, farm to table dinners, the Riverbend art show that we put on, all of those funds go into the fundraising account and operating funds. So we've managed to establish this and it's quite healthy. You can see that for 2021, we've gotten about $4,000 in there. And examples of using this money, it's for extra projects. So last year during COVID, as you know, the parade was not able to go on, the Christmas parade, and other members in the community were doing some music around town. So we decided to actually hire a local artist, and he set up in the back of a pickup truck, and on Christmas Eve, or maybe it was the day before, paid for out of our fundraising and
You're cutting out. You're cutting out, Jocelyn.
I just saw that. Am I better now? I can't see you. Am I good now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is one area, for example, that we were able to give back to local artists and supporting somebody directly within our community financially. So public art granted by the Board of Trustees pays for this year, for example, it's going to be the Trails of Treaties. It's the Ute sculpture by Orland Joe in 2021, and it will be installed in Laverne and Johnson Park. The 2019 funds will be were spent on the Bell of Renewal. That also launched the Creative Outlets electronic box program, the Clio app, which is our online sculpture tour. So the LCF grants Those also are the electric boxes, and we used money from funding the accounting, from our fundraising account and our operating fund and public art fund to pay for, say, landing stones, plaques, lighting. So we appreciate that LAHC today is one of the only other commissions that has such a large budget besides the Parks and Recreation, and it's quite significant. We greatly appreciate it. And we all agree with the mayor that it is time to consider a new way of reporting our ideas to the Board of Trustees. We'd like to work with a dedicated board of liaison, in addition with the finance director, also to create a better transparent financial reporting process and bringing forth our ideas that we have so that we can clarify and be better about understanding of our goals and making sure that they're in line and in conjunction with the Board of Trustees. And so perhaps something like that can be done at your earliest convenience. We are ready to go. So if there are any questions at this point.
Any further questions by any members of the Board of Trustees? Mayor Pro Tem Browning.
There's several members of the LAHC here, and so I really kind of direct this to everybody because I'm not sure who's been on there the longest, but because my knowledge mostly of dealing with the LAHC has been in the last 3 years I've been on the board. But in the past, have there been processes for when major art pieces, and I'm not sure how you define that, but I guess one way is to look at the cost of it. I mean, it's one thing to, I said this at the workshop last time, if you're going to have a $1,000 honorarium to an artist who's going to loan a piece of art to the town for 2 years, that's one thing. But, paying $12,000 for a permanent installation somewhere, if town funds are going into it, probably calls for at least somewhat of a different process. And has there been either a process established in the past, or has the LAHC talked about a process that if we're going to spend, X amount of town funds, that we ought to, do advance notice to the Board of Trustees or the staff liaison or something before we commit to that? I mean, I don't even understand what the process is, and that's really kind of the reason I ask questions. Is nobody ever told me, oh, when there's a big art project that goes through these steps. I don't know. So
may I answer that, Lauren? Do you mind if I take that question? Mark, I think it's really valid, and the only experience that I have is really with the Bell of Renewal. That was a big project, and I was the liaison on the Board of Trustees at the time that came forward. And I remember talking about it, and I think we did approach it back then a lot more casually than maybe what we should be doing going forward, and probably really should set up something a little bit more formally. So it was pretty casually introduced from me as a liaison to the Board of Trustees, getting some just initial ideas and feedback. But then the LAHC really developed the plan, and we did then present it in a more conceptual concept of what the budget would be and what our contribution was. But there was really only a minor idea of what the sculpture would look like. And we didn't have it even identified exactly where it was going to go yet. But we knew who was going to be doing the work for us. And so the Board of Trustees, based on that information, decided to go ahead. And I believe at the time they gave us around, and I could be wrong on this little detail, but about $15,000 went towards that particular project. And then we came back when we really had great outline and sculpture of what it was. So it was a really informal process. And I do appreciate that you want to have something that's a lot more formal. So I think that now going forward, we are happy to do that. And we actually have now gotten all of the detailed information of what we've got coming up that we would love to sit down and present to you. So we can do it in a much more formal way. And then I would say, let's establish a protocol so that there is a better expectation, and, we can make sure that we can communicate. I will say, the Arts and Humanities Commission, though, really does need to have a singularly dedicated liaison. I know that it's been difficult this year, and I know you guys are strapped with a lot of work, but it would probably make things a lot more easy and cohesive if we had one person that was able to really spend the time with us, so that we can make sure that we are anticipating what your needs are, so that we can be addressing them ahead of time and earlier than reactionary.
Yeah, I just stress it. The last thing I would want, and I think anybody on the board would want, would be the Board of Trustees voting on the artistic merits of a project. That's not something any of us wants to tackle, I think. But on the other hand, the board, I think, has some obligation to the taxpayers, basically, that if a lot of town money is going to be spent on a project, that they should know about it. And
Absolutely.
if the LHC wanted to kind of like draft up a protocol about how the board would be informed, and I think that'd be a great idea. So, because I think it's just kind of a process that's evolved in bits and pieces, really kind of like you say, based on particular projects that have come up. But particularly if we're going to do a creative district, as I think that we are, maybe having a written protocol of here are the types of things you should inform the board about in advance and everything. I think that would be good and would avoid unpleasant surprises for either the board or the LAHC or the creative district going forward. I think that's probably a good suggestion. Thank you.
Wholeheartedly agree. Thank you. I do appreciate that, and we will definitely do that.
Any further comments by the board? We've approved, I believe, the concept of creating, financing the creative district in the budget. So I certainly can't wait for the presentation and more information. I think it's terrific. I think it's terrific.
Super. Add us to the agenda and we'll be there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, team.
Let's see. Staff reports, utility update.
Hello, Mayor and trustees. I don't have a whole lot to add to the report that I submitted for the agenda, except that the one new one, if you haven't heard, we do have a leak over at 2nd and Evans on the water main that developed last night. We're not sure what's going on underground, but I do have a contractor coming in tomorrow, and we hope to be able to get that opened up, and hopefully we can resolve the issue quickly. I did want to emphasize what I put at the top of my report about the street sweeping the rest of this week. So anyone out there listening, or let people know, we're going to try to get the streets all swept this week. And it does help with the storm drainage by getting the leaves out of the gutter so that they don't all get pushed down in there. That was really about it. Everything else was listed pretty much in the report. Long's Peak, they were almost finished. I don't know if they got the last manhole in this afternoon. I don't believe so, but should be tomorrow that the last manhole gets put in if it's not done. And then they'll be connecting up the remainder of the service lines on Long's Peak. And that should take the remainder of this week, potentially into next week. But starting after Thanksgiving, we'll start working on the water line down at 3rd and Long's, working the way up. That's really about it, unless there were any questions for me.
I have one. Is that a leak on Evans? On Evans, or is it on 2nd? The
It's
reason
right on the corner, but it appears to be on the line that runs from 3rd to 2nd on Evans.
Okay.
So the line itself is Evans because we turn off 2 valves, one at 3rd, one at 2nd, and the leak stops. So we just have to track back where on Evans, but it's leaking literally right on the corner of Second and Evans, where the
Okay,
Lions ditch is there.
okay, so we're gonna have to maybe get down and dig up Evans that was newly paved.
Yes.
Okay, that was my concern originally, but you never know.
Hopefully, we don't have to get into the sidewalk. That will be even
Okay.
more.
All right, I understand. Leaks can happen. Any other questions for Aaron? Seeing none, we'll move on. Administrators report.
Good evening, everyone. Nice to see you. I want to give a brief COVID update. We are staying in touch with Boulder County. As we all know, COVID cases are surging, specifically in some of our communities that border Weld and Larimer County. As of today, there are 6 ICU beds available in Boulder County, and then we will be full. Talking with some of the public health officials, they think the highest peak right now, if it stays as projected, will be the last week of December. Potentially will be the highest peak that will be similar to what it was about a year ago. So they're encouraging continued, of course, vaccinations, masks, outdoor events wherever possible, and even in outdoor events, if you're going to be in close proximity to people, to be wearing masks. So we'll just continue to attend those meetings and communicate with the Boulder County Public Health staff as they provide information. Summit Housing, they are now scheduled for closing on November 23rd. That got pushed off again, but they're feeling confident about that. We did meet on site with their construction firm. It's called CMC. If you recall, you met the contractor at one point during a board meeting. And they have hired Roberts Excavating, which did our McConnell, the Lions Valley River Park ponds. They're a great contractor to work with. Roberts has been hired to do the grading and excavating and placement of the utilities. So we're happy for that. We have a good relationship with them. They've been to Lions for a while. And so we met on site. They are planning of where to put their construction trailer. The one thing I do want the public to know is that as soon as they close, they will be probably fencing the entire perimeter that is against the existing neighborhood. And so you might hear some grumbling about not being able to get to the ledge ditch, through Summit, but that will be an active construction zone. So we'll have to start using the access down by the high school for those that want to get up to the ditch or over to Picture Rock. Also, we received the development plan review application for the Lions Hotel. It doesn't have a name yet. They said they're just calling it Lions Hotel. So as of right now, we have a quasi-judicial process that will be starting, and you should refrain from communicating with people about the project. Staff will now start their review of the application, and the Planning Commission will get it next, and then it will be coming to you. They are hosting, you may have seen this or heard this, they are hosting an open house tomorrow night at the library from 6 to 8 p.m. So I would encourage you not to attend now that they have turned in their application. But they are going to have 3 different little stations for the public. One will be to look at their initial design plans and talk to the architect. The other will be talking about the process, concerns, parking, that sort of thing. And then the last station will be the hotel consultant that they've hired that's going to talk about how many jobs will be created, how much sales tax, property tax, those sorts of things, for people who want to get a little more detailed about the impact of this hotel on our community. So that was their own choosing to do that. They want to get out in front of that and talk to people, show pictures so people aren't as maybe fearful as they might be, knowing this is a pretty big change in our downtown. So as of right now, we do have their submittal application. The other application that I received on Friday was a conditional use review application from Planet Bluegrass. So that as well means that will be coming to the board at some point. So the board should refrain from engaging with the applicants or others in the public discussing this until it comes to you in a formal staff and applicant presentation. Okay. Those two have been turned in. I want to reiterate, I was just so appalled by the amount and the type of graffiti that Bone Park was tagged with over the weekend, and our new 2nd Avenue Bridge underpass. It's pretty obvious that it's not gang graffiti. It appears to be probably middle school age students by the look of it and the words and the drawings. And so I just want people to know that, you know, even though Lions, as Sergeant Chris said, is a safe place, you need to know where your kids are and what they're doing. This is totally unacceptable. We will be reaching levels of cleanup that now will classify as a felony. So this is really, this is a big deal, and it needs to stop, and we need to, you know, keep our eyes and ears open and try to find some hints on what is happening and when it's happening, and if it's part of this TikTok challenge and all of that. But it was pretty awful. I would have been really embarrassed and disappointed if we had guests in town, you know, from the state or the feds, and everything was tagged. It really looked awful. So I want to thank Crystal for trying to get out there this morning. Crystal White got out there this morning and tried to work on it. There's absolutely no way one person was going to be able to do that. So tomorrow we have a professional graffiti removal company coming in from the metro area that's going to have the correct equipment and chemicals to try to get this off. So yeah, it was pretty awful. A couple other things. I do want to let the board know that our revolving loan fund is sitting well. We have all 14 related COVID loans that we had issued at the beginning of 2020 have all been repaid fully. We currently have 9 loans out, but we still have $116,000 available to loan to any of our businesses in town that need a little extra money at a very low interest or no interest to make some improvements. Also, because of this really mild fall and weather we've had, RV parking continued at 95% through October, which is pretty unheard of. And our parking revenue year to date for the Laverne Johnson and Bone Park is over $100,000 now. So we did get the kiosk doors repaired at Bone Park, so we'll be ready for that next year. We've ordered the kiosks for the new Black Bear Hole improvements, so we should see that go up as well. And then we are still planning at this point to host the Lions Artisan Market and Parade of Lights on the weekend of December 3rd and 4th. We're listening closely with public health. The artisan market will require no one to enter without a mask. We are eliminating about 10 different tables, so there's a little more space in the elementary gymnasium. But we also want to tell people to sign up for Parade of Lights. We are planning to continue to host that since it is outside, but that always sneaks up with this fall weather. We don't realize we have a parade in 3 weeks for the winter holidays. So we need people to sign up and participate in that We are planning to do fireworks. That's been approved by the fire department and others for the weather. And so we have already procured about $10,000 in scholarships for the parade. So it sounds like people want to do it. And Sumex has donated their lift truck again to help us get our decorations up. So those are some of the highlights for the last couple of weeks. Any questions?
Are there any questions for Administrator Simonson? Trustee Lowell.
Thank you, Administrator Simonson. I have a couple of questions. I saw that graffiti too the next day. It was disgusting, and I guess my question is, are the cameras active? And I know you can't say too much, but were the cameras active, and have they been looked at?
Yes, there is one active camera there right now. Well, maybe no longer today. There might be more by now, but they obviously knew where they were and were able to dodge that. I guess the best thing I can say is that we're working with the Sheriff's Department for some interim other mechanisms for surveillance in the meantime. One of our problems is the Wi-Fi strength out there is not the best. But yes, we are working with the sheriff to come up with some other alternatives in the interim till we have something more secure. But no, the cameras were on, and we can see activity in the area, but we cannot see the actual perpetrators. Plus, it apparently occurred somewhere between 8 and 10 at night. So I'm not sure that type of camera we have would pick up at that distance, but we're going to definitely be adding some additional surveillance.
Would it be worthwhile? You said the suspicion is that it might be middle school kids. Has there been any sort of I don't know what term to use, any sort of a presentation to the students by the resource officer there that talks about the potential severity of these crimes and what it could do to a kid's college application or job application?
Well, obviously, Sergeant Christ, as you heard, Mitch Rosenborough is the school resource officer that he spoke about so highly tonight. He is working with him, and I will follow up to see if there's some kind of assembly or something they can have, to help educate kids. I don't think, at the time, if young adults or children are out there doing that, the term criminal mischief sounds a lot different than just graffiti. But once you hit a certain level of value, monetary value, it turns into a felony. And this is now at that stage.
Okay. And the final thing I want to say, I can't say too much about the hotel, I guess, but do you have any insight on when the demolition is going to occur? Because,
it's pretty unsightly.
Unannounced, I guess. We had some fire department drills in there. We've got buildings now where they vented the roofs with holes in them, and both buildings are kind of a mess. So,
well, no, they were actually, I heard from them immediately following the weekend. Well, we talked to them during the preparation for the fire practice. That was all prepared ahead of time. It was all that the staff were aware of it, the fire department, the sheriff, everybody. They look forward to opportunities to get to practice real life scenarios like that. So it was great. The issue is that they have a demolition permit for the entire building. We are waiting for Excel to come and disconnect the gas before they can demo. And now they've notified us that could be 2 to 4 months. And so the owners are going to be talking with Aaron. I see Aaron popped on here. to see if there's a way they can start the demo prior to it and avoid certain areas, just to, that, you know, no one, I don't think they expected it to look as rough as it does after the fire group was done. So they are fully aware of it. They would love to get it demoed sooner. It's all if the building inspector and Excel can coordinate time and safety. Aaron, you have anything to add on that?
No, we were discussing, like you said, what we would do with Excel. Again, if they cannot go into the ground, we could be okay getting the buildings down. So they're looking at those options. And they did find a little more asbestos, they mentioned, in one of the buildings, and had to do one more round of that. They had been waiting for the asbestos cleanup to be finalized. We thought that was done. So waiting for one final report on that. And then hopefully we can work something out to get the buildings down, and then they just can't excavate until Excel gets their gas worked out.
I think, yeah, it involves 2 mobilizations then for that construction company, but I think they're willing to do it. They realize it is dangerous and very unsightly.
Further questions for Administrator Simonson? Trustee Rogan.
Thank you. Thank you, Administrator Simonson. So going back to COVID, has there been any discussion about having a booster clinic or a child's vaccine clinic in town like we did earlier?
What I've heard is that they have been really focusing on these border communities right now. So Netherland is having theirs this week, their booster clinic, and Longmont. My understanding is like almost 40% of the cases are there right now. So I think most of their efforts are there. We can certainly, if we want to do that, we can certainly request it and see if we can get it organized. Maybe we could even do it over that holiday or parade or something when we have people in town and other things, but certainly we can put a request in for it.
Thank you.
I think that's an excellent idea. Further questions to Trustee Miller?
This is just kind of a comment going back to Trustee Rogan's question. We were told by Lynette Anderson, I believe her last name is.
Your
Trustee Miller, you're muted.
microphone went off.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you stopped at Lynette Anderson.
That Lynette, that there was not going to be anything here in Lyons. So if we want something here, I suggest that we ask for it.
I can ask for it still. They can say no, but we can request it.
Right. Yeah.
Further questions?
Hi, sorry. I did reach out to Boulder County Public Health and ask, and we haven't heard back yet, but happy to ask them again.
Good. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, legal update, Counselor.
Thank you, Mary Angelo. First off, I want to say I'm fighting a bit of a cold right now. So if my voice goes out, that's the reason why. So I apologize for that in advance. But I do have an update on a number of different matters that either we're working on or I've been asked to research. So I wanted to give that update. First, concerning the Benita Yoder case, I think we all remember that the case that was against the town was dismissed by the Boulder County Court successfully. So we're happy for that. And that the show cause hearing is going to take place this Friday, November 19th. Ms. Yoder has filed a motion to dismiss against our show cause. The hearing officer ruled today that she will consider that at the hearing on Friday. And so we'll be sure to update the Board of Trustees how that what occurs at the show cause hearing at the next Board of Trustees meeting. But we are prepared to present that case and move forward with the abatement if successful. So that's the update on that one. Next, I want to give a very brief update in the Callahan case. We did receive the settlement check that was provided for in the settlement, so that's good news. I'm still working on getting the interview date that's required as part of that settlement as well. So that is still in the works on that one. Next, I just want to give a brief update on Freisig. It's been a long time probably since we've talked about that one, but Mr. Freisig has been very timely submitting his settlement checks. And so the town continues to receive payments every month, pretty much right on time, for both the attorney's fees and the damages and the unpaid rent, as part of the settlement in that case. Next, I want to give an update on the opioid settlement. You may remember at the last meeting, we approved the documentation to join that settlement, or excuse me, 2 meetings ago, we did actually. After I submitted those documents to CML, they did let me know that over half of the jurisdictions had submitted their documents as of November 1st, I think it was. And so, they are pretty confident they would get the rest of Colorado jurisdictions by the end of the year, kind of having a special time period to try to track down those last few ones. And so they're pretty confident that we're going to be successful in receiving the maximum amount available under the settlement agreements. The next issue I want to talk about was the Save Our St. Vrain case. I talked about this several months ago when the Court of Appeals decision came out, but more recently, the Colorado Supreme Court denied Boulder County's appeal on that case. And so I just want to give a brief reminder as to what happened in that case, what it means going forward. And so you may remember that, and I think you all know that Martin Marietta has a plant near Lyons for gravel mining. That plant was not operational for some time, basically since 2006, is my understanding. And the special use permit for that facility had a lapse provision, which meant if activity ceased on that site, that the permit would lapse, and that they'd have to get a new permit essentially if they wanted to restart mining activities. Martin Marietta put in notice they are going to restart gravel pit mining on that site. And the Save Our St. Vrain objected to that on the theory that the permit had lapsed. And so what then happened after that was a very conversation through the Boulder County Board of Adjustments and the Boulder County Land Use Director on what the meaning of lapse was. And Boulder County had said that basically if any activities were permitted under the permit had occurred, then the permit did not lapse. And because reclamation activities had occurred after 2006 to the present, that permit didn't lapse. Of course, Save Our St. Vrain had a different opinion and said that if you weren't doing direct mining activities, then the permit lapsed and was no longer into effect. And so after Boulder County made their determination the permit did not lapse, they were sued by Save Our St. Vrain. That went up to the Court of Appeals eventually, in which the Court of Appeals ruled in favor of Save Our St. Vrain, that under the rules of statutory construction, the permit had lapsed. I mean, the permit was no longer available, and that they could not resume mining activities on the site. So now that the Supreme Court has denied cert on that decision, what it means is it gets remanded back to Boulder County for a determination consistent with the Court of Appeals decision, which basically means a determination whether or not actual mining activities had taken place on that site or not. If they haven't, then that permit for mining will have a special use permit will have expired. And the Martin Marietta is not precluded for seeking a new permit, but of course, when you seek a new permit, additional conditions may be placed upon that permit as a conditional use. And so that's more or less the history and the status of that. I know it's of interest to many residents of Lyons, and I just want to give you my read of that decision and where it's at this point, given the great interest I think a lot of Lyons residents and the board has in that case. So, happy to answer any questions on that one as well.
Are there any questions for Counselor?
And I do have one more item, but if there's any questions up to now, the last one's gonna be a little more lengthy. So if there's any more questions up to now, I'd be happy to take those, I guess.
Any questions for Counselor? So continue. Trustee Miller.
So when is the next Boulder County review on that?
I'm not exactly sure when that will occur, but it was remanded back to Boulder County for a determination. So I assume that will happen fairly quickly on whether or not the permit has lapsed or not. And it would seem, based on the pretty direct language of the Court of Appeals decision, that there's really no other option but to decide that the permit has lapsed, which basically puts the ball back in Martin Marietta's court, which means that they'd have to reapply for a permit, which would restart up the process for a special use permit at that point.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
Continue, Counselor.
Yeah, so the last item I had on my list was you'd asked for some research on the lodging tax and whether an update on whether that could be a percentage based or just a flat fee. And so I did some research into basically why the Lions tax was developed the way it was, and things have happened since that time. And so the short story is, and of course we'd have to go into probably a legal memo to get to some of the more nuanced and difficult parts of this, but the short story is that Lions tax was based on the town of Eagle's tax. And the town of Eagle at the time was a statutory municipality, just like the town of Lyons. And it was a $2 tax, just like Lyons was. Pretty much the same verbiage as the tax that Lyons has currently, with the exception of camping, which was an add in the Lyons tax that Eagle didn't have. And after Eagle implemented their tax, I think it was in 1999, they were sued by various hotels in the town of Eagle, claiming that they could not implement a lodging tax. And the reason for that is really gets down to some very complex and nuanced issues concerning the meaning of an occupation tax under the Colorado state statutes. The section that gives statutory municipalities the ability to lodge taxes is very interesting and kind of old and antiquated. And so it refers to an occupation tax, doesn't refer to kind of broader excise taxes that you might see in other states. But an occupation tax traditionally has been pretty broad in terms of what the Colorado courts have said that it can be. And in opposition to this kind of broad exercise of occupation tax we're allowed to do, the Colorado Constitution is explicit that we can't charge an income tax. That basically the state is the only one that can charge an income tax. And because of that provision in the Colorado Constitution, several enterprising entities over the years have been able to construe various taxes, regardless whether they're an actual income tax or not, into an exercise of income taxing authority, which is prohibited by the Colorado State Constitution. And so there was a kind of historically some pretty bad case law in Colorado that more or less any variable tax could be construed as an income tax and therefore unenforceable under the Colorado State Constitution. So fast forward back to year 2000, Eagle's tax is challenged basically on the same theory that because it's a potentially a variable tax, it's $2 per room night, and the number of nights you rent out every day of the year is different, it's variable, and therefore some kind of income tax that's prohibited by the Colorado State Constitution. That was a theory of the hotels. The Colorado Supreme Court disagreed with the hotel. They said, that this earlier case law leads to really absurd results. We're now seeing that, maybe we were wrong. The court always refers to itself in the present, regardless of when it made a decision. So basically overturned those previous cases that were a little suspect, that really kind of turned on the variability of the tax and, put down a new rule, which says that income tax means it's somehow based on your revenues or your income as a commercial entity. And so the variability is not so much important as really the formulation of the tax and whether it's taxing your income as a whole or something else. And so long as you're taxing something else, you're probably okay as part of your occupation taxing authority. And so the town at the time it was formulating its lodging tax took the most conservative approach, which was a tried and proven taxing method, which was the flat $2 fee per rental, more or less, because it was the same as Eagles, and Eagles had been just approved more or less by the Colorado Supreme Court, been blessed by the Colorado Supreme Court. And so that's kind of how the $2 tax got there. Since that time, there's been a couple other lodging tax cases. They're a little different. They're mostly around whether or not you can charge a lodging tax in online retailers who aren't the direct lesser of the room, but really are kind of a middleman. And municipalities have done fairly well in those cases. Denver won a pretty big case over Expedia on that basis of the Colorado Supreme Court. So because of really those wins, I think other municipalities have taken that as looking at the Colorado courts have looked fairly favorably on lodging tax authority, whether or not it's home rule or not, and have expanded, even in statutory towns, the ability to put up lodging taxes that are not a flat fee, but are rather a percentage basis of some kind. And so there have since then been a number of municipalities who have charged a percentage basis. Whether or not the town should adopt that is probably something we want to discuss, confidentially, as to the risks and rewards potentially of that result and how precisely we want to formulate that. But I want to give you kind of a history about why the town went with the flat rate, why other municipalities have decided not to go with the flat rate. And that, there's definitely a decision out there to be made. And really the decision is how much risk the town thinks there is, given kind of the current state of the legal landscape. Now, in order to make these changes, of course, would require another vote if you wanted to change the lodging tax itself. And so, that's obviously the first barrier to making that kind of determination. But the board had asked for some background on the lodging tax, so I try to do a little bit of research into the legal side of it, at least, as to why it is the way it is and what you could do about it in the future.
Thank you, Council. Are there any questions for Counselor at this time? Mayor Pro Tem?
Any idea how many statutory towns now have percentage-based lodging taxes? Is it just a handful, or?
From what I can tell, it's just a handful, because I think most of people kind of jumped the gun right after Eagle got theirs in place and had it blessed by the Supreme Court and said, we're going to go with that methodology. And that because the Denver Expedia case is more recent in vintage, I think it was 2017, that only a handful had moved that direction. And there was a few that, for whatever reason, kind of took the risk of a percentage base, prior to that. So it's a relatively recent movement towards a percentage base. And it's, so we could talk about it in detail and through memoranda or through a more privileged setting. But, there's potentially a risk out there still. So it may be the reason why more haven't moved towards that direction.
And just to be clear, home rule cities, there's no question they can do a percentage lodging tax, correct?
That seems to be the analysis that's been done. I think that, of course, there's a different analysis on, home rule versus statutory powers. The statutory power sections, I said this occupation tax is pretty limited in its expanse, and as a home rule, you can kind of expand upon that in ways that the statutory municipalities cannot.
Thank you.
Yep.
Further questions for Council? Thank you, sir. Under ordinances and public hearing, we do have a public hearing tonight. So I'll open the public hearing and ask for any public input on the proposed 2022 budget. Would anybody in the public wish to address the Board of Trustees at this time? Madam Clerk?
No, sir, I don't see anyone's hand raised.
This is Laverne.
Your name and address for the record, please, Mrs. Johnson.
Laverne Johnson, 306 Evans, Lyons. And we put in our bid for the museum of $12,000, which was the same as last year. And I couldn't find it in the defined thing on the budget. And I'm just hoping that you did approve it, as well as some money for the good old day, which is June 25th. So that's all I have. Thank you.
You're welcome. Let's see, can we, it's a public hearing. Are we allowed to answer that question? Can you answer that question, Administrator Simonson?
I can. Are you want
Go
to
ahead.
close the, you want me to?
Well, yeah, I think we should collect all the
Okay.
public comment first.
Yeah, are there any other public comments? Okay, I'll close the public hearing. Administrator Simonson.
Yes, currently, after discussions with the board at your budget retreat, this was on the list to include the museum. We did have a discussion on Good Old Day, and that was not supported through the town budget for 2022.
Okay. That's what I recollect, but I wanted you to state it for the record. Madam Clerk, could you please read the consent agenda into the record?
Yes, sir. Consent agenda. Item 1 is Resolution 2021-116, a resolution of the Town of Lyons, Colorado, approving a professional services agreement with Precision Employment for HR services. Item 2 is Resolution 2021-117, a resolution of the Town of Lyons, Colorado, approving the third amendment of the professional services agreement with Enline Electric LLC. Item 3 is Resolution 2021-118, a resolution of the Town of Lyons, Colorado, approving a lease agreement between the Town of Lyons and Telluride Bluegrass Incorporated for use of Laverne Johnson Park for the 2022 Folks Festival. Resolution 2021-119, a resolution of the Town of Lyons, Colorado, approving a lease agreement between the Town of Lyons and Telluride Bluegrass Incorporated for use of Laverne Johnson Park for the 2022 Rocky Grass Festival. Item 5 is Resolution 2021-120, resolution of the Town of Lyons, Colorado, ratifying the First Amendment to the Professional Services Agreement with Northline GIS for upgrading and maintenance of the GIS system. Item 6 is Resolution 2021-121, resolution of the Town of Lyons, Colorado, approving the Second Amendment to the Professional Services Agreement with Murray Smith Incorporated for the 4th Avenue pedestrian bridge, trail connections, and street improvements projects. Item 7 is Resolution 2021-122, a resolution of the Town of Lyons, Colorado, ratifying the 6th Amendment to the Professional Services Agreement with Interwest Consulting Group Incorporated for consulting services, professional civil engineering 2018-engineer services. Item 8 is Resolution 2021-123, resolution of the Town of Lyons, Colorado, approving $46,000 in retention bonuses for town employees. Item 9 are the November accounts payable, and item 10 are the November 1st, 2021 Board of Trustees meeting minutes.
I'm sorry, I was muted. Are there any items on the consent agenda that any trustees would like to remove from the consent agenda for consideration?
Yes,
Mayor Pro Tem,
I'd like to remove items 3 and 4.
Trustee Lowell,
I'd like to remove item 8.
do we have a motion to approve the consent? Are there any others? Excuse me. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exceptions of items 3, 4, and 8?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as stated. I'll call for the vote, Madam Clerk.
Mayor Angelo,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning,
Aye.
Trustee Lowell,
Aye.
Trustee Miller,
Yay.
Trustee Waugh,
Aye.
and Trustee Rogan.
The consent agenda is approved as amended. Mayor Pro Tem?
Items 3 and 4 are the proposed leases to of park facilities to Planet Bluegrass for Rocky Grass and Folk Fest. The cover memo indicates that the leases would be for the same rate that was paid in 2021. I'd like to propose that we raise those rates by 10%. During the budget process, the Parks Director indicated that many of the expense items in the Parks budget due to inflation that is a concern in many areas now were increased by 10% for next year. And it's also my understanding that that next year, camping during rocky grass in particular will not be done at Riverbend as has been done in recent years, so that it's foreseeable that there will be more people camping in Laverne Johnson Park than in the past, which will put a greater demand on shower facilities, streets, roads, parking, so that I think we'll see a greater increase in the use of town facilities. And I think it's appropriate to raise those charges, those rental rates by 10%. And I would so move.
I'll second.
I think we need a motion to
Oh, that's true.
resolution then, or
Okay.
so we'll take one at a time. There are two separate
Yeah.
resolutions.
Yes.
Okay, let me withdraw that motion then, if that's okay, and then I'll move to approve the resolution, and I'll propose an amendment. I move to, should we do it one at a time?
Yeah, one at a time, please. Yes.
Okay. Let me get the right number. I would first move to approve resolution 2021-118. A resolution approving the lease of town-owned property with Telluride Bluegrass Festival, Inc. for the 2022 Rocky Mountain Folks Festival.
A second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second as stated by Mayor Pro Tem Browning. Are there any comments, discussion?
And now I'd like to offer an amendment.
Trustee Walsh?
Question,
Okay.
Go ahead, sir.
where did the current terms and conditions for the lease that's in the resolution come from? Where were they created? How were they created?
Administrator Simonson?
Yes, and Director Mitchell's here as well for details. What we do for this particular lease is we take the total amount that we would normally generate on a 100% capacity day in the park. So parking, camping, bathrooms, all of that. And then we have rounded it, and we have a flat fee. So no matter if it was Planet Bluegrass or someone else that wanted to lease that park for the entire day, this is the fee it is to lease it. So that's where that number came up from. Kim, and did I miss any component of it? Parking, camping, bathrooms?
Kim?
No, that's it. It's parking revenue, camping revenue, shelter revenue. And it's a flat fee, just so that, and we actually brought it up to the Planet, that if someone else were to come to us, say, ride the Rockies or bicycle tour of Colorado, or I don't know, a celebrity wedding, we would have a flat rate to reach out, because I'm not sure who was on the board that recalls, but we used to do a 50% based on the number of attendees. And so the flat fee, regardless of what you all decide, it just really helped with budgeting to know we were going to get X amount per day.
So am I to understand that this is the established market price for the park for any already been communicated to Planet Bluegrass prior to tonight's meeting and the drafting of this resolution?
Yes, if I'm understanding your question correctly.
Yeah, I just want to make sure this is a standard price. It has nothing to do with Planet Bluegrass. And this was also established commercial market-based pricing. Just because that's my question. And when we get to comments, I'll make a comment.
Okay.
Okay. My question, and I'm sorry, I missed it, Mayor Pro Tem, what's the difference in the cost to Planet Bluegrass? I'm sorry, I missed that.
I think that's a question on the amendment, though, which hasn't been offered at this point.
I haven't offered my amendment yet.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Sorry, Mayor.
Oh, that's all right. Don't be sorry. That's why I didn't get it, because it hasn't been offered yet. I was ahead of myself. Trustee Miller.
I'm just, need to throw out there for full disclosure that I, have done work for Planet Bluegrass and can be impartial to this vote and can, vote without a bias here.
Any further questions? Trustee Rogan.
Yes, at what point do we establish the rates for renting out the park or changing the rate?
I think that's a great question. How we've done it as staff is based on what we would get in revenue if if it was July, I don't know, I'm going to come up with the dates, 10th through the 16th, but the same 5 days type of thing. And so what that revenue would look like. And we haven't rented it out to anybody else yet, but it's nice to know what that looks like. So we're not losing money by renting it this way. It's just a matter for the board, I guess, to decide what they think is fair. It does allow for up to 800 campers.
Trustee Watt.
I just want to be clear that those 800 campers don't pay any lodging tax because it's actually camping in the park. Is that correct?
No, they do pay.
Oh, that is correct because it is renting the park and renting that. I don't want a trustee to answer it. I want staff to answer it, please.
Yeah, don't interrupt. Don't interrupt.
All right.
Go ahead. Staff?
Sure. My understanding, and I might need some help in terms of interpreting where it ended up with Attorney Dittman and Town Administrator Simonson, but there was an agreement, I believe, for Planet Bluegrass to still contribute lodging fees, taxes.
Planet Bluegrass pays the
Sorry.
So to be clear, they're already paying $1,600 more than anyone else that would come and rent the park under the current pricing because they have a specific agreement for this. Because the way the ordinance is written is that camping in the town park does not collect lodging tax. So somebody could explain to me that. I just want to be clear that we're not double taxing Planet Bluegrass for this over what campers would normally pay if they rented the same spot from the park. And then I'd also like to understand how lodging tax could be applied when we rent out the entire park to someone other than Planet Bluegrass, which apparently has some kind of agreement directly with the town with regard to this.
Can anybody answer those questions, please?
If the town directly solicited camping, it would not be paying the lodging tax. If another part, we rent out the whole complex to a third party, whether it be Planet Bluegrass or somebody else, they could be made to collect lodging tax, just like Planet.
But if they charge the campers to camp there, which they wouldn't need to do if they're already paying for all of the camping spots.
No, I mean, they're reselling the lodging with the camping. Then
I'm saying they're not reselling it. They could put 800 staff members there or 800 members of the band there or what have you, and let them camp in the camp, because that's what the fee is based on, is how much it would cost to rent every campsite without lodging tax from the park if someone came and did this. Is this not correct? I don't understand. I don't understand. I just want to understand the taxing. I don't say how we can charge someone the same rate as if someone came here and charge them a lodging tax, which we don't even collect on our own, other than a separate agreement with Planet Bluegrass, which says that we will do that.
I would argue the only exception to lodging tax that's in the ordinance is, from a political subdivision. And so I think any which is not a political subdivision, charging for the use, or charging or providing some sort of lodging would have to collect the tax. And whether that's paid directly by the person, buying it, or the the entity that's the reseller, if you will, is an entirely different matter, but it would have to.
Unless the town is that reseller.
Unless the town, because it's specifically exempted under the ordinance. That's the way the ordinance is written. And if you want to change that, it would probably, we would change, excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice. If we want to change that, we'd probably have to go back to the voters to do that.
Okay.
Do you have any insight, Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes. I don't remember how many times we've talked about this, but let's go over it again. The lodging tax is an occupation tax, as Attorney Dittman explained earlier in talking about lodging taxes generally. It is a tax on the occupation of providing lodging, which could be a hotel. We define lodging to include camping. So when Planet Bluegrass or Wicasa or the new hotel or a lodge or anybody provides lodging, you're engaging in the occupation of providing lodging in the town of Lyons. That tax is measured by $2 per night per room for a hotel or per campsite for camping. We went through that, I don't know how many different times. We ultimately compromised with Planet Bluegrass that the number of campsites would be determined by dividing the total number of campers by 5. So no, it's not $1,600 for 800 campers. It's 800 divided by 5 times 2. There is a difference between the town and the ordinance that implemented the lodging tax. The board at that time determined to exempt town provided facilities. The reason was that the town could either charge tax to campers, collect the tax, report the tax to the town itself, or the town, if it wanted to, could just raise the fee by $2. It was thought at that time by a prior board that it would be administratively simpler if we just set the fee at a certain rate. I believe Trustee Waz tried to change that 3 different times now, and it's been voted down 3 different times. It's been explained 3 different times. The ordinance remains as it was originally drafted, which is the town is exempt, but anybody else who engages in the occupation of providing rooms or camping in the town of Lyons owes $2 tax per night. The town is on the provider, not on the camper. The tax, excuse me, is on the provider, not the camper. And that's why Planet Bluegrass owes it, as they acknowledged when we amended the agreement with them earlier this year.
Thank you. I would like to ask a question. How many times, and I think Kim can probably provide this answer, how many times during the year do we have 100% capacity at the capability at the park?
Now, quite often, in terms of all of the camping shelters and parking, I would say weekends, certainly in June, July, and August.
Okay, and I have another question. The in and out in regard to the parking, if we were full during the year on a regular basis, I think that if I understand this agreement, that Planet Bluegrass would basically be paying a flat rate for the parking, but don't we generate more in the summertime with people coming and going in the parking spaces, or is it the same? Are we charging them for, let's say, 8 hours of parking?
I think that's a great question. How we did it as staff is we took an average. So, what we're making daily on average on a summer, 5 days for 5 days of parking. And it comes out to be about $1,600 per day just for the parking. And that includes the in and out.
Okay. All right. Any further questions? Hearing none. Mayor Pro Tem?
I would like to offer an amendment to ordinance 2021-118. That's the one dealing with Folks Festival, to increase the rental rates by 10% from that proposed in the resolution.
May I ask a question? Is
There's a motion, there's a motion before the board. Let me ask for a second first.
Second.
I'll second so that Director Mitchell can ask her question.
Okay, good. Go ahead, Director Mitchell.
Sure, Mayor Pro Tem Browning, is the 10% on the daily Laverne Johnson fee or the wastewater treatment plant parking or both? Yeah.
Both.
We have a motion and a second. Comments? Trustee Waugh.
How many campsites and approximately how much lodging tax will we be accumulating from one night of one of these rentals?
That's for me.
I think you can answer it.
Sure. I'm gonna have to look based on what they paid before. They roughly do about 97 is the math from last year. So 970, so divide that by 5. So I'm gonna say 200 if my math is reasonable.
Yeah, that's close.
And a 10% increase over the pre-existing market-based rate that we would charge any company or any organization to rent the park. What is that amount per day? Just remind me.
You mean the lease agreement?
Yes, to rent it for one day. You said how much?
Sure, it's right now it's $4,100 per day.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Further questions? I just want to get my figures right. So we're talking about $4,100 per day. And what is there a fee for the wastewater treatment facility as well?
I think that's inclusive of both, I think.
No, there is, sir. It's in the lease agreement, but it's separate. So Planet Bluegrass, since we don't have Bone anymore, they have a lease agreement with Laverne Johnson Park. And we went to a flat fee. I want to say we went to that flat fee in 2019. So this would be the 4th year. And then there's an additional to lease the wastewater treatment plant parking, which is in front. Typically that's only needed so far on Rocky Grass weekends and not on Folks Fest, but we put it in the lease. And in the lease, it says, if they notify us that they don't need it, we don't charge them.
So the all-in cost for both, what would that be?
Yes.
Oh, you guys are making me do high-level math. 4,100 times 4 for Folks Festival because we're on Folks. So 16,000.
Let's just start with a daily. So if we did a daily with both Laverne Johnson and the wastewater, what would that be?
Oh, see, well, that's why it's tricky. So it's 4,100 daily for Laverne Johnson for either festival. And then the parking is separate, 1,200 for 3 days. So I guess daily, that's 400.
$400. So it would be 4,500 altogether per day, basically.
Basically, but parking's 3 days and camping's.
Right. You can't just get one day. Understood. Yeah.
So
What's 10% more of that?
So that'd be another $450. So you'd be looking at almost of $5,000, $50 short of that.
Per day.
All I'm trying to get at is what additional money we're going to accrue. That's 4 days. We're talking about an additional $450 a day. So we're talking about an additional $1,800.
Isn't it $450 total, not per day?
No,
If
no,
it's
per day.
$450
Per
for
day.
3 days.
No,
Over 3 days, so it'd be
$3 days.
$1,300,
So-
$1,350.
okay, all right. That's what I'm trying to get at. All right. Any further questions?
Trustee Waugh has his hand raised.
Trustee Waugh.
So, I take a lot of heartburn to this for a number of reasons, but I will say that, and I can't emphasize this enough, this is the market-based cost up approach to pricing this. And I feel like we're penalizing a local business by arbitrarily adding 10% to their bill. I would be much more in favor of raising the overall price for all users of the park by 10% than by specifically outlining Planet Bluegrass and these two amendments. So, or these two resolutions. So that is my feeling. I feel, and I've said this before, I feel like there's a lot of pressure and a lot of specific demands placed on Planet Bluegrass by members of this board that tend to propose additional costs at the last moment. And I just feel like this is what the published price is. And now at the last minute, we're going to add 10% because you're Planet Bluegrass. And I just don't think it's fair. And if we need the extra 10%, let's make the price 10% more for any user of the park, because we get accused often of treating people who come to this town from out of town better than we treat the people who live in town. So that's my comment.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, let's talk about market pricing a little bit. If you seek to procure lodging at, let's say, Vail Resorts in mid-October, the off-season, you can get a room for a certain price. If you seek to procure lodging at Vail Resorts during the week between Christmas and New Year's, you're going to get a much different price. And the 5 days of Rocky Grass Festival and 4 days of Folk Festival are peak demand in Lyons. Every Airbnb is rented at a maximum price. Hotels are full. Try flying an airline next week over Thanksgiving weekend as opposed to early summer. So if you're talking about market pricing, the question is whether the town of Lyons on the facilities that it markets should reflect the actual demand that the market has for these and do its form of what's essentially a little bit of demand pricing, or whether we should ignore what other entities do, sports teams, hotels, transportation companies, everything. I think that there is a high demand for this. As I said, I think that the actual demands placed on the parks will be more because there will not be camping, as I understand it, this year at Riverbend. And so you'll see more people in our parks, more wear and tear on the facilities. And I think inflation's a fact these days. We're raising our overall expenses by 10% because we expect our costs to go up for the parks next year. So why shouldn't we try to raise revenues where we can? And this is the highest demand time of the year. And I think a 10% raise and is appropriate. Planet Bluegrass itself adjusts its ticket prices to fit demand from year to year. And I don't see why the town of Lyons shouldn't do it too. I think a 10% raise is appropriate. And I think it's justified, and that's why I've offered my amendment. And I intend to make the same 10% amendment for all of the listed charges.
Okay. Trustee Rogan.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with Trustee Waugh on this. I think that if we want to take a look at demand pricing for our parks and our services related to our parks, then let's do that. And let's make sure that we communicate that. And let's make sure that we're being fair to everybody who may want to rent a park for a day. I don't feel comfortable at all raising the price 10%, even though I know that inflation is an issue. I know that there may be more demand on the park with more campers, but I think staff did a great job in determining what the price ought to be. And if we want to look at different ways to price it, then let's do that. But let's not start here with these particular contracts. I also want to say I really appreciate in these contracts that now anyone who lives in the 80540 zip code can walk in the park, not just residents of the actual town of Lyons. So Kim, Director Mitchell, really appreciate that addition. And that's all I got to say about that.
Trustee Wong.
Just say that if there's anyone on this board that understands demand pricing and how pricing of overnight accommodations works, it's me. Not someone who had 30 plus years of public service as an attorney. I have an MBA and I do this for every day of my life. So I do not need to be lectured on it, and I will not actually explain to you why a bird in hand is worth two in the bush, and sometimes discounting or at least equal pricing for money that you know is tied up is much better than I sure hope people come and it doesn't rain that weekend. So I don't appreciate being lectured by someone with not very much experience in market.
Point of order.
Market
Point of
pricing.
order. Stop
Thank you.
personal insults.
Yes, let's not get into personal animosities.
It's not an insult. It's a statement of fact.
I understand that, but you know exactly what I'm talking about. And I'll uphold the Mayor Pro Tem's point of order. I have to be honest with you. I think that for the amount of money that we're talking about, that I have a difficult time supporting the amendment. I think that that Planet Bluegrass offers a phenomenal amount of goodwill, and in addition to that, reputation for the town of Lyons. I understand inflation, and I think it's going to accelerate, but I think that for what we're talking about, that we should reconsider, as Trustee Wan and Trustee Rogan has spoken to, about doing this for everyone and not subjecting a single entity to a higher rate. I would feel much more comfortable if every single person that was came to the town to rent the park paid the same fee. And so I will be voting against this amendment for those reasons. Any further comments? Trustee Lowell.
I have a comment for Kim Mitchell, a question for Kim Mitchell, rather. Are we raising all the rates in the parks for 2022?
That's a great question, Trustee Lowell. So far, no. So it's kind of how it works typically in my experience is we put out a fee schedule, and then that fee schedule is valid, and it's currently valid with the pricing structure we have right now. It's online, whether people are parking now, parking in July, camping for next week, camping for next summer. We generally do a new fee schedule, and we budget with the fee schedule. We currently have not put in any increases this year for camping or parking. We might have a few very minor fee increases for shelters, and that's as of right now. Now, granted, I think we could always come to the board, this spring if we had to. The fee schedule generally gets adopted by the board. I see Victoria. That would be the 2022 fee schedule that the board would adopt with everything. When is that, Victoria?
It's scheduled to come in front of the board December 6th. So if you wanted to adjust the fee schedule for everyone, that's where it's currently slated to occur.
Yeah, I think it would be appropriate to revisit that fee schedule, as Mayor Angelo noted. Nothing's getting cheaper, everything's getting more expensive, so perhaps a modest increase and the overall fee schedule might be in order. I can't, in all good conscience, vote for Mayor Pro Tem's amendment. So I'm going to be voting against this.
Okay, further comments? We have a motion, we have a second, we'll be voting on the amendment. Is that correct, Counselor?
Yeah, we're voting on the amendment and then the motion.
Okay, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Angelo,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning,
Aye.
Trustee Lowell,
No,
Trustee Miller,
No.
Trustee Rogan,
No.
Trustee Waugh.
No.
The amendment fails. Any further amendments? Now we'll vote on resolution 2021-118. Madam Clerk?
Mayor Angelo,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning,
No.
Trustee Lowell,
aye.
Trustee Miller,
Yay.
Trustee Rogan,
Aye.
and Trustee Waugh.
Aye.
Resolution 2021-118 passes. Item 4, resolution number 2021-119. Mayor Pro Tem?
There's no need to repeat the whole process. So if somebody who's in favor of this wants to move and second, we just vote on it and get it done.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We're voting on approval of resolution 2021-119 as stated in the resolution. Any comments? I'll call for the vote.
Mayor Angelo,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning,
No.
Trustee Lowell,
Aye.
Trustee Miller,
Yay.
Trustee Rogan,
Aye.
and Trustee Waugh.
Aye.
Resolution 2021-119 passes.
Mayor Angelo,
Yes.
I just want the board to know, I think this is just hard for staff is to have us try to change these on the fly. So, you've trusted staff to come up with this pricing based on the best knowledge that we have. And so this honestly threw me, but I'm happy to give you all the answers. But I did write a note because we don't do this a lot. This is really, when you said, lease for another, somebody could come to us, but then I think that could put us in a spot where if we said, oh, this is how much we would earn, this is how much we would rent you, and then have it come back where they would have to listen to this kind of on the fly, just can be challenging. So I wanted to just point that out.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
If I may respond to that, the only chance the board has had to give input on this is when it showed up on the consent agenda. We weren't asked in advance what our opinions were. And I would also like the record to reflect that I emailed Town Administrator Simonson and Kim Mitchell to give them a heads up that I would be seeking an increase. So I didn't surprise them with it here tonight. The board does set fees, including what's to be set in December. It is within the prerogative of the board to do that. I don't think the staff has negotiated very well with Planet Bluegrass in the past, so it was within my prerogative to do that. And I'll just say, I don't appreciate being criticized by a town staff member for pulling something from the consent agenda, expressing my opinion, whether it passed or didn't pass. I don't appreciate that, and I think the staff member is out of line.
You've been noted, Mayor Pro Tem, and I received your email as well. Trustee Rogan.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to state for the record that I did not at all consider Director Mitchell's comment a criticism, but information about how our actions affect staff. That's all.
Thank you. Let's see. Trustee Lowell, you pulled resolution number 8. I don't have it before me, so I can't read the number, Your comments, sir?
Yeah, it concerns the
Bonuses.
staff retention and recognition bonuses.
Okay.
And I only bring this up for two reasons. One is to make absolutely sure that it sees the light of day in a public discussion. And I need to discuss the dollar figure that is in the resolution. I have no problem with this. I am foursquare in favor of all of this. You know I am. I'm trying to understand the difference between, initially we had a decision between 40,000 and 69,000. I had made a suggestion to Town Administrator Simonson to up that ante by about $1,000 for a specific employee. I know I was supported by at least one other member of this board. I see now that it's at 46, and I guess my only question is the difference between 41 and 46, were other specific suggestions made by other members of the board, or is this $5,000 to be used as at the discretion of the town administrator for handing out bonuses?
I think that the town administrator has the prerogative to make those decisions and also answer Trustee Lowell's question.
Sure. As you know, we talked about this at our public budget workshop. I had asked if any of you wanted to give feedback or other suggestions. So I did get your suggestion, and I did receive several other suggestions. So I tried to find some balance between all of that and stay within where I felt I was getting the most feedback of what would be acceptable. So this would include actually your recommendation, but also a recommendation from several others to do an additional $5,000.
Perfect, absolutely perfect.
But yes, and then today I heard from a couple others. So, you know, this was something we were just trying to get into this year's budget, and so that it could recognize employees that have worked with us through the entire pandemic and came into work every day. As you guys know, but I don't know if the rest of the public knows, that Town Hall really never closed. We a group of us were here every single day during the pandemic. We did not work remotely. So, and our public works workers and park workers exposed themselves to the public regularly for the last 2 years. And this was suggested by the Board of Trustees as a recognition of those efforts from the employees that have stayed through the pandemic.
Understood and appreciated. And the 46K will satisfy all the wishes of yourself and the board members?
It satisfies the wishes of what I believe is the majority of the board, but of course we couldn't vote, and it's, we can't have a serial meeting. So it's on the agenda tonight for transparency and further discussion if the board wants to have that amongst themselves.
But you're absolutely sure that 46K, I don't need to amend this up to a higher figure at this point?
That is up to you guys.
I'm taking your word that the 46,000 is adequate for all.
The 46,000 will be greatly appreciated by staff. I believe that there are, like I said, I drafted this resolution before I heard from everyone. So I did get feedback after it was drafted from a few people that they think it should be higher, but that's up to you to discuss.
Trustee Rogan.
Thank you. Trustee Lowell, I'm so appreciative that you pulled this from the consent agenda, because I too think we need to have a transparent public discussion about it. And I am going to make an amendment to raise it to the full $69,000. I think that this is a once in a lifetime, hopefully once in a lifetime opportunity to make a real tangible difference in the lives of the people who have worked so hard through this pandemic. I mean, we've been, I don't know about everybody else, but I have not had to go into an office. I have not had to worry that I was going to be exposed every day. Yes, should I shut up, Attorney Dittman?
It's fine. I just want to point out that there is no motion on the floor yet, so there can't be an amendment. So I don't
Okay.
think your comms are stricken from the record or anything, just that we will need a motion on the floor before we can amend it.
Okay, so I'll just say that I intend to amend.
Trustee Lowell,
I would move to adopt resolution 2021-123, resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, authorizing retention and recognition bonuses for staff in 2021.
do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we go to questions or amendments, Counselor?
If there are any questions at this time, otherwise we can proceed right to the amendment.
Yeah, are there any questions? Seeing none, Trustee Rogan.
Thank you. I would like to amend resolution 2021-123 to increase the amount to $69,000 to be distributed as Administrator Simon sees fit. The reason for that, besides what I've already stated, is that this tangible recognition of the efforts that staff has put in working sometimes one additional job, sometimes two additional jobs during this time to keep the town running will have a large impact on staff retention. I think there's no question about it. I think staff needs to feel appreciated by us. And I think this could make a real difference in people's lives. I think the $46,000 number is a great number, and I'm sure that it would be much appreciated by staff. But the difference between that and the $69,000 could actually be life-changing. It could pay for a car repair that somebody didn't know they needed, or childcare. So I strongly urge my fellow trustees to consider this. The money is there. The money has been saved from salaries that we haven't paid. And I think it is a wise investment in our staff and will be much appreciated as a thank you.
Mayor Angela, I just want to point out there's not a second on the amendment yet, so we'll need that before further discussion.
Okay, do we have a second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second on Trustee Rogan's amendment. Discussion? In addition to
Trustee Wah has his hand raised.
okay, excuse me, Trustee Wah. In addition to the $46,000 that was originally proposed, are we still talking about closing town hall at the end of the year, Administrator Simonson? In addition to that? Go ahead.
The feedback I got from most of the board was that they were supportive of doing that during closing between the week of December 20, it'd be the 27th through the 31st, two of which days are already current holidays.
Okay.
And so it'd be closing 3 days.
Okay.
That was, again, without taking votes, on the side, that was the impression was most people were supportive of that. As long as there was on call, someone checking the phones, still responding to emergencies.
Right. Trustee Wah, you had a comment, sir?
I was just going to thank Trustee Rogan for her presentation of that. I concur, and I'll be voting to support the amendment.
Further comments? Seeing none?
I also concur with that.
Okay. All right. Any further comments? If not, we'll vote on the amendment.
Mayor Angelo,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning,
No.
Trustee Lowell,
Aye.
Trustee Miller,
Yay.
Trustee Rogan,
Aye.
and Trustee Wah.
The amendment passes. $69,000 will be distributed according to Administrator Simonson's will. We'll vote on the resolution 2021-123 as amended.
Mayor Angelo,
Aye, I'll go with the will of the board.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning,
Aye.
Trustee Lowell,
Aye.
Trustee Miller,
Yay.
Trustee Rogan,
Aye.
and Trustee Waugh.
Aye.
The resolution passes unanimously.
And
Okay.
thank you ahead of time from staff, though I'm sure you'll hear from them individually. It is, we've never done this before, and I think it will be sincerely appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, General Bid, could you read the next item into the record, Madam Clerk?
Yes, the next item, general business number 1, is discussion direction on potential future uses of the depot building.
Okay, staff, any background?
Sure. I put several documents in your packet to talk about this because the depot has just such a lively and colorful history to our community. So I wanted to make sure everybody understood some of the background of the building itself. But basically, the discussion tonight has to do with for the past 5, almost 6 years, the depot's been used as the headquarters for our flood recovery team. That team, as we've talked about several times tonight, is starting to diminish and will be down to 2 full-time staff at the end of the year. 2 full-time staff at the end of the year. We have room at Town Hall to transfer those 2 over here for the remainder of their term, which could be March or June, depending on how the projects end up. And so I think it's appropriate for the board to start discussing how they'd like to see that building utilized in the future, moving forward. As such, we do need to remember there are some covenants on it, and we need to recognize the zoning. So currently it is zoned municipal. And that does have, I included in your packet tonight, a list of the uses that are approved by use by right under municipal. And so if there's going to be something other than that, it would take a zoning amendment, or a waiver or an amendment. The other thing is that the State Historic Fund does have covenants on this property. And I've also included that. It's just 1 paragraph until you go out to their website. But basically, if there's any alterations, renovations, construction, a list of things that would alter the architectural integrity, that takes their pre-approval. So those are just 2 things to remember as you guys have a discussion. I know I've talked to several of you individually before, and there's been lots of things that have been thrown out there as options. I've heard Mrs. Laverne say, I'd love to see it be a train depot or a quarry museum to recognize our history. We've had individual private businesses say, oh, it'd make a great coffee shop bookstore. We hear the Lions Creative Art Districts has an interest in potentially using that if that project moves forward. So it's just time to start talking about how the board would like to see it utilized. And if you want to do that by simply assigning it to a group, or if you want to go out for a request for proposals, see what people suggest and reconsider those. But it certainly is not, it's an opportunity we do not get very often. And it's one that I think is really important to have right now so that we can put together a transition plan for those staff that are still there.
Okay, let's open it up for discussion. Trustee Rogan.
First of all, I really appreciated all of the narrative in the packet. I found it super interesting. So thank you for including that. It really gave me a sense of the history of the building and what went into restoring it, which I didn't know all of those details, and it's really remarkable. My personal opinion is in the interest of fairness to open it up for RFP so that we can consider all of the options. That having been said, I think it would be a terrific arts community center. And so I look forward to seeing what other ideas folks have about the use.
Additional comments? Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the most likely use at this point is probably the LAHC because they're the ones that have put together a proposal. And I think we've kind of agreed that we're going to be forming a cultural district, and it makes sense to have a physical location for a cultural district. But I agree, we ought to basically poll the community and see if there are others that are interested in it, just to be fair, because we're not sure who might want to do it. I will say that I don't think the municipal zoning would fit with a commercial business there. I think we would have to change the zoning or grant an exception or something like that. But I think it's worth seeing what's out there. But and then if there's the LAHC becomes the actual proposal, I'd have some questions about that. Like, for example, should we separately track the utilities of that? Because that would be part of the support of the LAHC or whoever uses it for that matter. And then also, I think, if we do it to a town affiliated entity, whoever that may be, eventually, I don't know if you need the formality of a lease or with nominal rent, but if it's just a use agreement, I think it's important that the town keep the right to reclaim the use of that with appropriate notice. And it might be long, it might be a year or so, because if something happened to town hall someday, another flood or fire at town hall, and the town ends up at some point, which is the situation we were in before we started using it for town office space. If the town ends up having to lease expensive commercial space for town offices, and we had the depot property that we own, and we could save a lot of rent, which is why we moved in there in the first place. We ought to have that option under any agreement, and again, with appropriate notice to whoever else may be using it. But I agree. Let's put out an RFP, see if anybody else is interested. If not, then we should be able to finalize an agreement with the LAHC, and I do think that would be an appropriate use.
Further comments or discussion? Trustee Wong.
Yeah, I'm very much in favor of putting this out and making it available to anyone who has an interest. I think we've talked about this with municipal zoning in the past. I think it's also something that we should look at, adding some ability for us to use municipal property when appropriate to get fair market rate for renting, even if it is for a commercial business. So, I think for this specifically, I'd like to see, an offer go out to any interested party. And I think this one group already has a jump start on a proposal. So I think that's great. But, highest and best use is definitely what we should be using it for.
Any further discussion?
Attorney Dittman has his hand raised, sir. Oh,
Attorney-
sorry, Trustee Miller.
Attorney Dittman, do you had some?
Yeah, just really quickly, just to add that, if it were to be given to a commercial entity or, released to a commercial entity, it would require rezoning. There isn't really a waiver process available. If it was owned by the town and had some limited commercial use, then maybe we could do a text amendment, which would require both a PCDC hearing and then a board hearing as well. But the uses are fairly limited under the existing municipal use, but I just want to be clear that yes, it would probably require rezoning, for any sort of commercial use.
Trustee Miller, thank you, Counselor. Trustee Miller?
I would kind of like to see it be used for some youth, community youth space. Clearly, the youth do not have enough things to do around here. Thus, they are getting into trouble. but something, along the lines of a safe gathering space for youth. That's just something I'd like to see.
Thank you.
Arts could be obviously in part of that, of course.
Anybody else have any comments? I have a few. I was at my first LAHC meeting as a part of the tag team liaison with the Mayor Pro Tem. I had a couple of objections that stunned the LAHC, but I felt that I should be honest with them. Then the idea of using the depot for either a headquarter, because it's come up since, for the creative district, and offices for the LAHC, and the space for art shows. Additional ideas were perhaps a small a studio space or lesson space for musicians. And I just threw my arms up in the air and thought it was the best idea I have heard in a long, long time. I don't mind, obviously, putting it out for an RFP, but I think from a communitarian standpoint, that I couldn't think of a better use for that building. And as terms of the lease, I would include that they had to provide art lessons for both youth and seniors, so that we got into that a multi-generational, intergenerational concept again. So that's what I would like to see, and hopefully that'll come to fruition. Counselor, since the LAHC is a commission of the town, that wouldn't take a rezoning for that use, would it?
So one of the allowed uses, I believe, is municipal support center. So I think that if so long as it was part of the town, that should be allowable.
Okay.
I can double check on that. I put down the municipal section, but the municipal support services is one of the sections. It's one of the permitted uses, excuse me.
I mean, obviously, we'll have to see what comes through in the RFPs.
It's going to be a case-by-case determination.
Yes.
On what the uses as proposed.
Okay. Administrator Simonson.
That's why I also included in the packet how the library district, because when the library was part of the town, it was appropriate, and zoned for that. But when they became their own special district, the Board of Trustees seated at that time did pass a resolution stating that they feel this is still a public service, kind of like a quasi-governmental use. So I think this would be similar, that if it starts as an LAHC and becomes its own special district and would be there, you'd have to probably take a similar action.
Mayor, I just pulled it up. It allows for municipal administrative offices, which I don't think that would probably qualify. Municipal service facility is the one I was thinking of that may potentially fall under.
Good. Excellent. So I think that we have, if I'm not mistaken, this discussion is direction from the board to pursue RFPs. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Do you want me to start with that locally, or do you want it to go into our normal bidding process, which goes to the entire state?
Oh, boy.
I know, those are those challenges. The bid, I mean, it's fine to do it just locally. We can just advertise it as a public notice, that sort of a thing, if we want to start there. I'm
prefer
concerned
to
if you do it
start
statewide, you will
there.
have a,
I prefer to start there. How does the board feel about that? Mayor Pro Tem?
okay, just, yeah, thumbs are fine.
Yeah, thumbs
Okay.
up one.
I think we should start locally, yeah.
Yeah,
So I'm going to, staff will work on drafting an RFP
okay,
that is basically describing the building, describing, covenants, zoning, and maybe give them with the holidays coming, maybe just a 30-day response time. Does that sound reasonable? And then maybe the board will talk about if you want a subcommittee, depending on how many responses we get, or if it comes directly back to the board as a whole.
sounds good.
Okay, thank you for that direction.
All right,
Where will it be posted?
I'll make sure we post it on the town website, and we'll do some kind of a public notice on, gosh, I don't want to do in the Longmont paper necessarily, but we'll figure out a way to notice. Clerk Vasquez, what would be our best way to do that? So it's just local. Would it be the local newspaper?
Lions Recorder.
Yeah, but that's just online as well. And I know the Redstone goes out to a broader audience than just locally. So we could do maybe something in the utility bills as well, because every
Possibly
single person,
maybe
yeah, all
posted
the-
at the post office, on the post office bulletin boards, town hall bulletin boards. Well, we have a list of registered, businesses, including nonprofits. So we could probably do some form of information to them.
good.
Okay, we'll keep it local initially and to see what we get.
Sounds good. Everybody in agreement? Good. Madam Clerk, please read the next item into the record.
Yes, item 2 under general business is discussion and direction on the Lions Urban Renewal Authority guardrails.
Let's see. Commissioner Drystat?
Yes, actually, I think since this is a town discussion, town-related and oriented discussion, I think it would be appropriate for Administrator Simonson to lead this discussion. And I would take the role at the next URA meeting itself if I have a particular position or
That's fine. We just wanted to, this was started a long time ago. Trying to remember if you were a trustee when this was all started. And so, yes, that for people who may be listening, we have a board of trustees and we have a Lions Urban Renewal Authority, of which the board are members of, but there's also other members from our special districts, taxing districts that are part of that. So once the Board of Trustees has a discussion on this, it will be taken to the entire authority board. But we want to give you credit where it's due, and Mr. Drystat started this a long time ago. The Lions Urban, or the Board of Trustees wants we had a discussion and wanted to put into place what are being called guardrails. They could also be thought of just as guidelines to put into place before any Urban Renewal Authority applications are received, to try to give some guidance of what types of applications, what types of projects, what types of finance arrangements do we want to make. And so the Urban Renewal Authority Board, it was decided that they wanted to have the Board of Trustees have this discussion first. And the goal would be to have that discussion tonight, adjust as necessary. We'll bring back a resolution for the trustees at our next meeting if we're ready. And then it will go to the Urban Renewal Authority Board to consider and adopt as a whole. So right now, you have before you a list of draft guardrails that could be considered. whenever we get a project application that the authority and the board would consider. And so I'm hoping that you've had a chance to read this. I don't know, Mayor, if we want to go through it step by step, we might want to do it as a workshop. But in general, we have talked about this numerous times. I do need to note for the record that there is a correction needed in item, let me find it. You want to help me with this one? You can, Mr. Drysdale.
Yes,
might have it.
It's item
Which number?
six. Number 6.
Number 6.
Yeah. And that-
Go ahead.
instead of IE, which technically is it est or it is specifically these things, it should be EG, exemplum gradius, or outstanding examples that are not in that paren, not in any kind of priority order, or even suggesting that those are the priorities, but rather that all these things should be in a mix, and the Laura board should consider determining what the priorities actually are.
So basically the guardrails in general, thank you for that clarification. My Latin is not as good as yours, so that's good. I have, so basically the guardrails, Mayor, do you have a preference? Do you want to go through each one, or do you just want the board to bring up those that they want to have further discussion on?
I would like the board to bring up the ones that they would like to have discussion about. Obviously, if there's no discussion, then I think that perhaps the board agrees with both the language and the concept of each individual number. So if there are any questions, corrections, objections, now's the time.
And I do want to note that Mr. Drysdale, representing the Urban Renewal Authority, the mayor and myself have been through these in detail and have tried to wordsmith them to be broad enough to be able to apply them to a project, but not so specific that it would rule out something that actually might have benefit to the authority. So we tried to make them broad, yet that's right, protective.
Are there any comments from the board or corrections, objections? Mayor Pro Tem?
I sent a list of discussion items to Commissioner Drysdale, and I couldn't send them to the whole board because it open meetings laws, but Commissioner Drysdale, do you want me to go up? Do you want to talk about those? Do you want me to go down the main ones, or what's the best way to?
Yeah, once again, I view this as a Board of Trustees discussion, and so I would prefer for you to do it.
Okay.
I'm happy to go into any discussion at the lower board as a member of that.
Yeah.
Okay, I got about 4 things listed here. And then paragraph 2 of the draft guardrails talks about shouldn't put LURA participant funds at risk. Really, probably the only LURA participant that would be looked to for guaranteeing a loan in some form would be the town. I don't think anybody would really expect that the school district or the library district or the fire district would do something like that. Maybe the county, I don't know, under some circumstances. But if you're talking about the risk that the participant shouldn't expect, that a developer rather shouldn't expect the town or other URA participant to guarantee a loan, I'd suggested adding a reference there to directly or indirectly, including what are called moral obligation commitments. Those have been very controversial in a number of URAs, and for a town to actually guarantee debt of a third of a developer would probably require an election under Tabor, because it would be town taking on a debt obligation. So because of that, there haven't been, that I know of, very, very many direct guarantees by municipalities. Instead, clever lawyers have come up with something called a moral obligation commitment, which basically says if this URA project gets in trouble, the municipality will step in and fix it without specifying how. Could be takeover management, infuse town funds, not through a loan or something like that. And so it's really the moral obligation type of commitment. I think that should be the focus of that. And I think that could be addressed by adding language that says developers shouldn't expect guarantees of loans either directly or indirectly through a moral obligation clause. Should we do these one by one, or I've got three others? Or
Yeah, go ahead.
okay, the second would be in part 2A. There's talking about work with developers that can accomplish goals by arranging financing themselves and or only use available LURA funds that have already been collected, like earned tax increment financing money. I kind of think the opposite should be the goal there, which would be that developers should be able to request the use of funds that would be generated by their own projects, but otherwise not received. If you're going to do some new retail business in the Eastern Corridor, for example, to replace a vacant lot, if you don't do your retail business, the towns and the URA is getting nothing other than property taxes from that lot. But if you're going to bring in retail, it's been fairly common among URAs that sometimes there are negotiations of the developer to recover their upfront costs will collect like the first 5 years of the sales tax, but then after that it's split 50-50 or 75-25 or however it's split. But I would think that would be what you would look at rather than a developer coming in and using cash that's already sitting in the LURA coffers. Because right now, if everybody will remember, the only cash that's sitting in the URA accounts is that generated by taxes on the downtown URA district. So I think there should be some concern about using existing accumulated funds for particular projects that weren't in downtown, or using those instead of revenues that the project itself would generate. Not speaking to the particular hotel project that I haven't seen that got filed yesterday, but any hotel project in general. Hotels a lot of times generate special kinds of fees, of recreational facility use fees, and there's other kinds of things. And that might be an example of something that wouldn't exist. That revenue would never happen if the hotel didn't get built. So maybe they would propose to be able to use that as part of their financing. So I think that's really what should be addressed there. The third item, and this kind of goes to paragraphs 3 and 5, the URA was set up, and it actually says this in the intergovernmental agreement between the URA and the town, that the town is going to basically absorb the administrative costs of the URA, the preparing the agendas, doing the copies, dealing with the URA attorney, talking with developers, that type of thing. That all of those administrative costs to this point have been borne by the town. I think the town board and the URA commission should discuss whether that's something that should continue in the future or not. Is the town forevermore going to pay all the administrative costs, or at some point should URA funds be used to pay URA administrative costs? And I wasn't real sure what paragraph 5 meant about set up a repayment schedule to the town for its investments in LURA development. I didn't know if that meant future investments or the substantial.
It's past, it's repayment of what the town has already invested in Allura.
Okay, if that's going to be considered, then we would need to amend that IGA between the town and Allura, because the town basically agreed to do those. And I think the reasoning at the time was the Allura basically had no money at that time. And if the Allura was going to get started, it made sense for the town to provide the administrative costs. But now that the LURA increment has grown and it is producing more revenue than property tax revenue than it used to, it may be time to relook at things and decide whether those costs should be shared in some respect or borne by the URA. And the fourth item I had was in the
Which
EG.
one? Oh, EG.
Yeah, number 6. After even correcting for the EG of examples of things that would, for which criteria and priorities for expenses the ERA would cover. A number of things in that list, examples, are things that infrastructure type things that generally ERAs try to get done. Public improvements, infrastructure generally, public parking, renewable energy, utilities, that type of thing, infrastructure type stuff. But also listed in there are things like sprinkler systems, grease traps, side streaming facilities, which I would tend to think of as things particular to a specific type of business that might come in, a specific type of development. If you're going to do a restaurant, for example, you're going to have to put in a grease trap. If you're going to do some type of light manufacturing that's going to produce wastewater that we don't want in our plant, you should expect to do side streaming because we have an ordinance in place now. So I think that list may need some modification to take out the types of things that would be specific to particular developments, but leave in basically the infrastructure things. And those were my comments.
Thank you. Any further comments? I think that can staff redraft some of the Mayor Pro Tem's comments and suggestions?
Well, I think I'd like to discuss a couple of them first. In regard to 2A, it does have an and or there. And so the intent is, first of all, that if it's possible that the developer can do their own financing, that's awesome. And or if, let's say, they can only get financing for $200,000 of a project and they need 225, and the board wants to allow them, upfront them 25,000 from the LURA fund. So to me, we wrote that as an and or, not as not only as a statement. So to me, if we had funds, let's say we do get let's say the hotel comes through and they start paying property taxes and this district starts getting really flush. It gives the ability of the board to either use those funds, the cash funds, or the developer to finance their own. But it's saying we would never allow them to incur more debt than what there is cash in the fund. That was the guideline, was just not to overexpend the fund, but ideally developers can arrange their own financing. So to me, when we talked about this, we made it specifically an and or statement to address both. We could break those into two separate, an A and a B. But the intent was that first of all, we want to pursue, especially now till the fund has more money, we want to pursue projects where the developer can finance their own. And as you stated, the intent was what you said in 2A. The developer should be able to use their own property tax and or sales tax to pay themselves back for their financing. That's the whole intent of 2. So if there's a better way to word that, absolutely, I'd be happy to. If you want to send me what you sent, Mr. Drysdale, that'd be great.
Yeah. I didn't realize that there were multiple people, and so I just sent it to Commissioner
No,
Drysdale.
that's fine. I'm happy to take a look if the board is in theory in agreement with the ideas that Trustee Browning proposed.
Yeah, we may be saying the same thing. I think there's a better way to it. The answer is always confusing to me. It's
again, these are not specific standards. These are guardrails for consideration of every project that comes in front of you.
And so
first and foremost, finance your own. If you can't, we would never give you more than what we have in a cash balance.
Yeah, I mean, the finance. I don't. What kind of got me there was it says would exceed, let's see. Funds that have already been collected. See, I read that as funds that were already collected before the project started. And let's say there's $100,000 in the URA bank account, and somebody comes in with a big project. Why would you limit them to $100,000 if their project was going to generate $300,000 a year of sales tax?
Well, because the TIF is only supposed to be the gap in their financing.
No, but let's say the TIF is $300,000.
Okay.
Why would you limit them to the 100 if they're going to generate 300? To me, and it's not necessarily part of their financing. It's that whatever TIF their project generates, and the town can agree to do the same thing for sales taxes, not just the property taxes.
Sure.
That ought to be potentially split in some negotiated fashion between the URA and the
Sure.
developer. Rather,
I think this
whatever cash was on hand when they brought the project there, to me, that's too limiting. Maybe there's a way to rephrase this. Maybe I'm reading it the way it was intended.
Yeah, that your interpretation is very, very different from the intention. The intention was definitely that as the TIF came in for that project, if that's what's negotiated, that would then go, once it is collected, would go to the developer.
Okay.
That's the intent. So however you want to phrase it to get to that would be fine.
Okay.
So if the board in general is favorable to the comments made tonight, I'd be happy to either meet with Mayor Pro Tem Browning or send your comments. We can adjust these, put them into a resolution. I guess it'll be by resolution format. Bring it back to the Board of Trustees, and then hopefully take it to the LURA board for their December 9th meeting. And because we are anticipating an application coming in soon, so we'd like to have the guardrails in place prior to that application, not change the rules midstream.
Okay, and don't we have to have a meeting to determine the LURA budget as well?
Yeah, we have to have that. December 9th, I think is.
We're going to do that on December 9th. Okay.
Sure. It's a pretty simple budget.
Okay. All right. I don't have a problem with that suggestion. How does the board?
And I know for some of the newer trustees, there's not a lot of experience with this. If you, and when you're seated as the LURA board, I'm sure there will be more, but if you want to meet or talk about these between now and then, I'd be happy to do that with you.
Madam Clerk.
Just real quick, the email I sent out to the LURA board asked for their availability for December 16th at 4:30, not the 9th. Yeah.
Okay. I couldn't remember which. I know we were struggling with several different.
I think everyone was available for that time, except Trustee Carvis. He prefers a later start time, but everyone else was good with it.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
So we can move on?
Any other comments from other board members at this point?
I don't think so.
All right. Look forward to getting the list, and let's work on the verbiage a little bit and see if we can get it into resolution form.
Okay, discussion for future agenda items.
Thank you, Mr. Drysdale.
Are there any by any trustees? Trustee Rogan.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to request an executive session to discuss the Honeywell matter.
Don't we have an opening at the beginning of one of our next meetings? You're muted. You're muted, Administrator Simonson. You're muted.
Got it. It just takes me a while to get to 3 screens.
Okay.
Currently the December 6th agenda workshop spot is open if we want to do what we did at your last meeting, which is actually start the meeting a little early so we can go into executive session and be out by the time the regular meeting
That's fine.
occurs.
That sounds good. Any other future agenda items that the board would like to address? Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, this is not great urgency, but sometime maybe early next year. Mentioned this before. I'd like to have either a workshop session or a discussion for staff and staff direction on how we are monitoring tax collections by food trucks and in town and wedding vendors. Or not just wedding vendors, really special event vendors from out of town.
We discussed that today, and after we get through the budget process and everything, that'll be handled the first meeting in the new year, hopefully, sir.
Okay.
Anything else anybody would like on a future agenda item? Okay, summary of action items.
All right, I have, we are to forward Mr. Leggert's email contact information to trustee Lowell. No?
I said done.
Oh, good. Next, send any CMEX questions, concerns to trustee Lowell, who's the point of contact. A request for a COVID booster clinic here in Lyons. The RFP to go out for the depot use locally first, then broader if needed. The Laura guardrail updates set for the 12/6 agenda. An executive session for Honeywell on the 12/6 agenda. And the follow-up to the sales tax and food trucks and vendors for after the budget is approved.
Administrator Simonson.
That's what I have as well.
Counselor.
Nothing more for me.
Okay. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I second that.
Thank you very much. I'm sure there's not going to be much discussion. I'll call for the vote. Madam Clerk.
Mayor Angelo,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning,
Aye.
trustee Miller,
Yay.
trustee Waugh,
Aye.
trustee Lowell,
Aye.
and trustee Rogan.
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Stay safe. Hopefully I'll get back from Nebraska with some good news.
And remember,
everybody.
we have a 5th Monday in November, so we have an extra week off in there.
Good.
Ooh.
We don't meet again till December 6th.
Yay. Bye-bye.
Good night, everybody.
I don't want
Thank
you to
you.
show
Good night.
up in 2 weeks. It'll be 3.